So welcome to the webinar again on best practices around content publishing on a zero gravity web developer portal. My name is Christoph Weber. I'm a solutions architect at Pronovix. I'm super happy to be here today in our new format of the webinar.
Hello everyone, I'm Ádám Balogh, a technical writer at Pronovix. I'm also happy to be here. Let's get started.
So what is a developer portal? Let's first get some ground covered here. It's first and foremost a self-service support hub, and that subdivides into a whole bunch of things in the modern world. It's an environment which provides all necessary materials and services for developers, but also some other audiences, as we'll see in a minute. It generates trust. It helps potential API customers. It has content for all API stakeholders, and we'll talk about those in more detail. And it helps maintain the relationship with API customers. So that's a tall order, a lot of stuff that we try to cover in a developer portal.
So let's consider a developer portal project as a luxury apartment complex, as Alvin Shaw put it in his talk, success metrics when launching your first developer portal. Now we know what we want to build, but before we can start, we need a team, preferably a group of experts who can help us and each other to make the project a success. Next to each team member, you will see or some of the tools they might prefer to use during their work. And let's keep in mind that we are talking from the production side now. So we will definitely need developers who develop and maintain the APIs or the products, and they can also help us creating and updating documentation and code samples, for example. Here you can see the preferable tools, code and text editors, version control system, for example, but they could also use CMS to publish and organize the content. Also, we have a product owner or product owners who define the product, the portal's objectives and features, prioritize features, and coordinate with developers, marketings, and other teams. They might use collaborative writing platforms like Google Docs, PM tools, and the CMS authoring system. Marketers who promote the products and the developer portal to attract developers. They create marketing materials and campaigns. They also collect feedbacks for improvements and work on SEO to increase visibility. They might also use collaborating writing platforms. They also have marketing tools and some graphic design environments and tools for SEO. Salespeople, on the other hand, they are who understand the products and the portal's value proposition, assist developers during the onboarding process. They can demonstrate the product's capabilities to potential clients. And the tools that they can use is also collaborating writing tools, preferably, and social media, for example. We have developer advocates who act as a bridge between developers and the company. They create engaging content, tutorials, and webinars, and as they advocate for the portal in the developer community. They also might prefer a collaborative writing platform, also use social media, and the support team members who provide the technical assistance to developers. They are those who troubleshoot issues and collect feedbacks also to improve the portal's visibility. They might use a ticketing system. They also need version control and maybe CMS tools to help their work. Documentarians are those, of course, who create and maintain documentation for the dev portal and mostly for developers. They are collaborating with the developers to create code examples and tutorials and such. they might use the same tooling kit as developers, but also they might need a collaborating writing platform to share drafts among each other, and which can help them to in the review process. And also we have site administrators who maintain the technical infrastructure of the portal and manage user access and permissions. Of course, they will use a CMS and preferably some monitoring tools. So if we are talking about the content on the dev portal, we can say that initially the content mainly focused on developers and reference documentation. It came from developers and so technical writers, and almost exclusively to developers and technical writers. But now content should cater to other stakeholders as well. So content comes from the most diverse experts to the most diverse experts. Of course, developers and technical writers included. And when we say that it should cater to other stakeholders, the reason is that addressing the needs of different stakeholders on a developer portal is crucial for the following reasons. Relevance. Different stakeholders have unique requirements, interests, and objectives. Tailoring content to their needs ensures that they can find information that directly applies to their roles and goals. Content that speaks to the specific needs of stakeholders is more likely to engage and retain their attention. It encourages them to explore the portal further, enhancing their experience. When users find content that directly addresses their questions and concerns, they are more satisfied with the portal's resources. This can lead to higher user retention and loyalty. For developers, clear and relevant content streamlines the onboarding process, helping them quickly understand how to use your APIs and services. By providing tailored content for support teams, FAQ, and troubleshooting, you can reduce the volume of repetitive support requests, freeing up resources and improving support efficiency. Content that showcases success stories, industry trends, and best practices can foster a sense of community among developers, encouraging collaboration and knowledge sharing. Content that aligns with the needs of product owners helps in conveying product updates, changes, and the platform's value proposition effectively to the developer audience. Marketing content that addresses the needs of marketers helps in promoting the developer portal and attracting new users. Ensuring content meets the needs of all stakeholders is essential for maintaining a cohesive content strategy that reflects the goal of the developer portal. A user-centered approach is essential for providing a positive and user-friendly experience on the developer portal. It demonstrates that the platform understands and values its audience. In summary, addressing the diverse needs of different stakeholders is fundamental for creating a developer portal that is informative, engaging, and supportive of a wide range of users, ultimately contributing to the portal's success and the satisfaction of its audience. So, a dev portal includes documentation types that align with the steps or process stakeholders go through. It also can help users move through the different user journey stages faster. The API documentation side, it can combine the advantages of automatically generated docs with content that addresses users more personally. And also, we should provide landing pages and descriptions for APIs. Let's zoom in the possible documentation types. Let's start with the most obvious one, API documentation. We have reference docs, but by themselves, they are not enough. We might have release notes, API overviews, which contains engaging content to introduce the most important features of the API, mostly for non-technical users. And also, we might need marketing pages and code samples, for example. Onboarding docs, like tutorials, getting started guides, setup instructions, examples, tryout sections, troubleshooting docs, for example, error code references, common issues and solutions, flowcharts, and such. Showcase options like case studies, use case examples, and showcase apps, blogs, metrics docs, like all the status pages, and metrics pages, of course, supporting resources like the FAQ, other articles in this topic, contact information, contact forms, and community forums. And now we can see that this is a lot. And now we could ask that who writes all this content? Luckily, we have volunteers who have experience in content writing. Developers can contribute by creating technical documentation, for example, code samples and tutorials. Marketeers can write, for example, blog posts, case studies, and other promotional materials. We have salespeople who can help them in this process. Of course, we have developer advocates. Also, they can produce blog posts, create video tutorials, or develop simple applications, developer and user stories. And last but not least, we have the documentarians, of course, who specialize in creating clear and user-friendly documentation. And they can also collaborate with the developers and all of these other stakeholders to create documentation throughout the developer portal. And which is really important, that all these stakeholders have preferable tools and environments that they use during their work. And now that we have the content that they produced, we can ask that we're going to publish the content on the dev portal, all of them, because they might need a solution which can used by all of them, or maybe just one of their groups. But also we have a dedicated environment and a standard workflow that can help them. Or maybe we would like to distribute these tasks to site administrators or, for example, content managers. And as we saw that all these people have their needs in case regarding the tools that they use. For example, we need an environment which can help them to use the tools that they used to, for example, the plain text editors, version control system, CMS authoring, and the collaborative writing platform. So far, we talked about the important parts of our developer portal and how it should help different people who work on this portal. We've looked at why it's crucial to have content that interests all stakeholders. Now we are excited to show the Zero Gravity Dev portal and how it makes it possible for different people to manage and publish content. During the demo, we will share some good ways to manage specific content. So let's get started with the demo.
Okay, thank you, Ádám. And as my screen is coming through, I'm going to have two windows open that I share. They're slightly overlapping here. In one, I'm a regular anonymous user of the developer portal, and in the other one in the back, I am logged in as an administrator, so I can show you the back end and editing facilities as necessary. So let's start here on the home page. Scrolling through the home page, I see a header that's highly graphical, some text, some buttons, 3 cards here with some benefits of the portal. So Ádám, what do you think about this content? Who is responsible for this as we see it right now in the window?
Well, the homepage of the dev portal is the gateway to the platform and serves as a critical first impression for example, for users or developers. It should provide essential information and features to engage and guide users effectively. We will see in a minute that what sections it's built up. Its creation involves multiple stakeholders with different needs. For example, content managers and editors who are responsible for ensuring that the homepage is up-to-date, relevant, and well-organized. We have marketeers, professionals might be responsible for promoting key features, benefits, success stories, developer advocates who can provide engaging content, including success stories and tutorials, product owners, site administrators. So, and as we saw, they possibly prefer different tools and environments. For this reason, it is possible that the homepage will be the last page to be completed, while it is important that it should evolve together with the rest of the content and services of the dev portal. The homepage and other landing pages are the most suitable page types to utilize the content editing possibilities and services within the CMS.
Cool, thank you. So as we scroll through, you see, the benefit cards here, in my mind, are good examples of where marketing people are working on the exact content to get it exactly right. As we scroll, here's an example announcement of something that's happening. That's probably a content editor of some sort that's writing this. We have a getting started section. That is probably a developer advocate. We have featured APIs, which is an automatically generated section based on some criteria that we figure out which ones should show up here. We have a section about this portal, which is probably, again, the developer advocate that is responsible for the exact appearance and content here, and so on. We have lots of sections on this homepage that tell the entire story of the API ecosystem that this developer portal is exposing to everybody. And ultimately at the bottom, we have what you would expect, a help section where if somebody has not found an entry point and started to engage yet, that they can start here. Let's quickly jump into the back end to show how this all comes together. So here I'm on the home page, and the crucial difference here is that I have these tabs that help me control the page. So I'm clicking on edit to get into the back end. And here you see how all these parts come together. So first and foremost, I have a title. And then I have a WYSIWYG editor here with content for the header. That's what we saw on that graphical header. And then the important parts is what we call page builder elements. These are the various sections that we scroll through together. So I'm going to click open this first grid to give you a view of what's in here. We have first an administrative title, some other controls, in particular here, and very important in this context, a layout, that this is in 3 columns. You remember we had the 3 cards of benefits. And we have some control over background and border colors if we want to use those, in addition to opacity. So lots of things where you can play with the graphical appearance, and ultimately here a benefit section that I can click open. And here is where the actual content goes in. So this content may be written in situ right here. It may have been drafted in a collaborative writing tool outside and might be just copy pasted into here. Doesn't matter really, depending on what the tool set of the person who's responsible for this is. So let's make a quick change here to show that we are in fact making updates live. I also have an icon control here that I can work on with, and again, color controls. As I scroll down, you see that we have more sections. We have them about this portal. I have how to start section. Let's reorder those. I can grab this and move it down. And ultimately, I can click save. And you see, when all this content is in here, I have saved. There's a little message that tells me that this happened. You can see that my exclamation mark is now showing up live instantly. And we can also see that further down about this portal and this section have been inverted in how they appear. So even though Ádám said the homepage may be one of the last pages that comes together, you don't have to build it all at once. It can be incrementally built as more content is decided that needs to go on the homepage. So with that, let's go back into my visiting mode and let's jump over into the heart of the portal, which is the API catalog. On the API catalog, we have again a graphical header to create some interest, and then very important, we have categories that help me categorize all the different APIs that are being exposed here. I have chosen terms that help me demonstrate that we can not only put REST API references into the portal, but also other types, and I'll show an example afterwards. But this category is really configurable. You can put your own terms in here, whatever makes sense in your own ecosystem. So the categorization helps me to filter down to just the APIs of interest and get to the ones I need to go to. Let's click into one of those APIs. I'll go to Moon Rover Photos and click on API documentation. This is the absolute heart of an API documentation. What we're looking at is a title. I have a version. We'll see how the version comes in. In a second, I have my category again. I have a little bit of a helper text up here, and then the reference itself, which is essentially the OpenAPI specification rendered out in Swagger UI. So, and we also have always a download button so that somebody can get the raw specification file down onto their own computer and look at it in its unrendered state. You've also probably seen the pet store example for a Swagger file. Nothing new here other than that when we deliver a developer portal, we theme the Swagger UI to brand colors so that it looks like a cohesive part of the developer portal and not just like a foreign part that's put inside here. What we also have when you open a method is that for everywhere where you see code, in the reference documentation, we have a download icon and we have a copy icon so that a developer can grab the code that's here and work with it outside of the portal. A typical use case here is that somebody is referring back to the source of truth, which is the reference documentation, looking up details, and also has already a code editor open side by side where they're working on their application and the integration that they want to build and are going back and forth and trying stuff out. So that's why we facilitate this going back and forth with tools to grab the code. What we also have is a bunch of code samples in all of those languages that you see here. It can be either machine generated, which is what we're seeing right here. So let's go over to another language, or they can come in as manual code samples that are included through a vendor extension in the OpenAPI specification. And again, we see the download and copy icons here so that a developer can grab the code and work with it. And of course, we have the response codes, what you might get. And obviously, since we have Swagger UI, there's a try it out button, which needs to be connected to a suitable backend, for example, a sandbox. And you might need to have to authorize through the authorize button so you can put in whatever authorization tools you have made available. So that's an example of a REST API. Let's go back to the catalog and look at another one, like a gRPC API, to see how that might look. And I'm going to look at the status API. And here you have a gRPC documentation that comes straight out of the gRPC tooling, the way a gRPC developer is used to and renders fairly well. As it happens, the Proto-C compiler has a documentation output, so you can use a command like this to produce Markdown, and I'll show you how that gets into the portal. So let's talk about how all these things get into the portal. I'll go back into my administrative setup, and hop over into the API catalog, and first go to the Moon Rover Photos. So here again, I have my page controls, including edit, delete, and revisions. So when I go into edit mode, we first see the manual in the content management system editing feature that we have here. So we have already uploaded a bunch of OpenAPI specification files with varying version numbers. The latest is this one, Moonrover Photos _1 in JSON format, and it has version 1.4.0 in the file itself. This is what determines the version number that we show in the portal. We can choose to upload a new file here manually, and you can go from here. The API header is manually put in this WYSIWYG editor, and an API category gets added manually as well in this field, and the rest is fairly straightforward. So that's manually how things go in. I'll show you next how CI/CD works. So I mean, obviously you don't always want to work with a manual editing flow, because as we saw, a developer might want to use version control and some sort of more automated flow. So I'm going to grab my terminal and bring it in here and overlay. So here I have, without going into details, actually let me first show another portal which is ready for this demo. Here I have an API catalog that starts with API X. This environment happens to be ready for CI/CD, so that's what I'm going to use. And now I'm going to bring in my tooling. I have a script ready, which takes as input the OpenAPI JSON file and an API summary file in Markdown format. When I run this, it takes a second and I get responses back from the APIs in my portal, and I'll show you what those APIs are in a second. And I get a response code 201, so obviously something worked as expected, and I get also some more feedback from the system. So let's take a look what we have here. I'll refresh the page, and you see that there is a new Pet Store OpenAPI example version 3.0, and if I look at the API documentation, this is what I just uploaded through CI/CD. What we also see is that in the specification, we have terms, pet store and user, that came across with this example. And if they weren't already in the system, they would be created. So it's fairly versatile how you can work with the CI/CD flow. All right, back to editing. So those are the two flows that are possible for pretty much any content, but in particular API reference. This is what is almost always the preferred flow in a mature environment. Let's look at the gRPC example, how that works. For that, let's filter again to quickly get to it. Here, if I go into edit mode, I have not uploaded an API reference file. I've chosen the fully manual mode to fill this in. I gave it a title. I have a description that is here, which shows up on the card. I have a version number that's now manually put in rather than dynamically read from the OpenAPI specification. I have the header, which we have seen before, and I have my category. And now crucially, I have this field filled out called manual description that we have added. And in here, I have dumped in the raw markdown that the tooling has provided. Right, so, and when I save, I'll just go back instead. I get this rendered markdown in the portal. And again, as you could imagine, the markdown is very amenable to being used in a CI/CD environment. You just tell through the tooling exactly which field, what information needs to go in. And I won't go into detail other than saying we have this all, it's there, and it gives you all the necessary tooling. So let's quickly jump into this particular API to give you a taste of what's there. This is very much work in progress. This is the very first extensive API specification that we have come up with to show what we have in the system itself, first to authenticate with an OAuth token, and how, for example, you can interact with API reference content that we just looked at, so that you can actually get a list of what's there. You can post a new one. You can post the Open API specification. So that was 2 operations. So when you saw me creating a new one, we actually had 2 post operations, this one and the next one. And then, of course, we have taxonomy terms that we also posted. So in fact, we were running 3 operations to get all the content in there. Like I said, this is very much work in progress right now. Probably later this year, we should have all of this inside of the portal fully documented. We just made the switch over to what's in the back end a couple months ago. So it's coming along. However, what I also want to show is that, and I'll let Ádám do this, an API is not fully documented with just API descriptions, API reference documentation. You also need more content. So Ádám, that stage is yours.
Thank you. Then I'm going to share my screen again. And I also opened the same page that was opened earlier. And as Chris mentioned, that API reference docs, whatever their format is, are the heart and soul of a dev portal. Reference docs come from developers and technical writers to developers and technical writers who have specific tools they prefer. But for example, content editors and administrators can also be involved in the content publication process. So we need an interface which can manage and publish display content created using, for example, plain text editors, API documentation platforms, and or by using the content management system. And also having version control, as you can see the revision step here. The system records all save statuses of the pages, and access control, or both, are crucial. It's possible to write commit messages as well, and the granular access control can be applied. But reference docs are not enough. We might need other pages to cater to other kind of audience. For example, I will switch to the API description page. Is a landing page that are designed to attract non-technical users to a platform. So it can have a brief description of the APIs, the primary functions, highlight the key features, benefits, and value proposition. These pages can also contain use cases and scenarios, showcases how your APIs can be applied, call to actions, links to detailed API documentation and other relevant resources, visual elements like diagram, infographics for better understanding. So this is a landing page for an API created using the CMS page builder blocks. But of course, let's switch to another page within the catalog, another API description page, which layout created using GitHub flavored Markdown. So if I go to the edit form and expand this grid, you will see that the text provided here is also comes from Markdown, and as you can see, it has a lot of HTML classes and other tags included. What is important that CMS authoring isn't the only way to create engaging layouts. If you prefer, you could use Markdown, and this is also true. And let's say so you can keep the same information on the page, but you don't have to use the CMS tools. you can always write the content in Markdown, so you can also upload it using the CI/CD pipeline. And this is also true for tutorials. For example, you can also include images, for example, but to make it more consumable, you can transform it into base 64 format. But you can also add buttons here and some other functions, for example, expandable reference tables. And as we can see, that the source is actually comes from a Markdown file with embedded content. And it can be also achieved, for example, in the release note pages. You can also add download buttons, version appeals, and such. So as you can see, it's up to your needs whether you want to publish content from Common Mark or GitHub flavor Markdown files. You don't have to always use these tags, of course. If you're up to the challenge, you can embed HTML snippets into your files to have visually different sections or functional parts, as we saw, buttons or collapsible tables. The authoring tools of the CMS are always present per se, but if your writers prefer, they could keep using Markdown sources, and they can push out the content directly to the portal. Or pushing can happen from a repository, of course. It's also possible to customize the CI/CD pipeline even further to serve better to the writers and the content needs. For example, using HTML snippets in Markdown can be cumbersome. It's hard to maintain, even harder to review. But you can replace the actual HTML snippets with custom tags that a script can recognize. Writers could add these custom tags around those content parts they want to improve, and the custom script will make the necessary changes during or before the upload process. With this approach, it is also possible to lint the documentation before it's being pushed to the site. And I will stop presenting now.
Cool, thank you, Ádám. So back on my portal. So let's explore what else we have. I'm a visitor again. We have a second section in our out-of-the-box product called documentation. Through experience and research, we found out that you need a section where generic information needs to be housed. This can be like the getting started section like we have here. It could be any other information that people need to know about your particular setup. We have here other pages. So importantly, there's easy navigation with the sidebar, so you can talk about concepts that you're employing, whatever those are. You could have a generic tutorial that is valuable across the entire ecosystem. We have here a more graphical page about managing your apps, whatever makes sense for you, right? So we also have here in-page navigation, so you can jump down to particular sections of a page, because experience shows that these types of pages can be quite long if you want to be exhaustive in what you document, and we're helping you and your users to get to the point where they need to go. In terms of administration, let's go to the documentation section. There's nothing particularly earth-shattering here. This page, the Getting Started page, has been authored in the WYSIWYG editor as HTML. You see that we always have a text format chooser down here. And you've seen when Ádám showed you options, let me scroll this up a little, that he had it set to GitHub flavored Markdown, but we have set it to Dev Portal HTML in this case. So then you get all these buttons to author in situ, or you could bring in the text from a collaborative writing tool, dump it in here as raw text, and then mark it up with, with the right styles. Like for example, this here is actually, let's go to this one. Registration is a heading 2 as opposed to heading 1 or any other section, and we can apply certain styles which are on brand to the text in the WYSIWYG editor. And the rest is standard CMS features, as Adam alluded to. We have revisioning. You can put in a revision log message to keep tabs on what happened here. That depends on your policies, how you want to do this. So back in view mode, so that's our documentation section where you can park all the things that are germane to your ecosystem and are not specific to any given API. We also have an FAQ section. Again, you see this familiar theme of categories across the top. So you can apply categories to each of the questions and answers. You can open one, and here as a little feature, we have a copy button. So if your support personnel is answering a question, they can copy this URL, send it to someone. If somebody clicks on it, it plops it into their URL. The FAQ opens right at the correct answer. So that's useful in a support context. And FAQ questions and answers can be authored one by one. And as soon as one is authored and published, the section expands automatically. Support, let's gloss over this for a second. Blog is very much what you would expect in a blog section. Again, we have categories that you can apply, and we have a teaser image, title, who wrote it at what point in time, the teaser text, and a read more link, and you can click through to the blog. So very much as you would expect. Blocks again can be written straight in the CMS, as we see here in the back end in a WYSIWYG editor, but of course you could also bring those in as GitHub flavored Markdown if you like, and you can either bring the HTML or the GitHub flavored Markdown into the system through CI/CD processes as well. Although I would not necessarily recommend HTML for that purpose. So that's a quick demo of all the features in the portal, or some of the features at least in terms of content authoring and how the content gets here. We can cover more in the questions and answers if necessary, but I'll hand it back to Adam now. And you're still on mute, Adam.
Thank you very much. So to summarize what we just talked about, some of your content creators might prefer the docs as code approach or the CI/CD publishing approach to push content from a local environment or from a repository through a pipeline directly to the portal. The best practice is that this approach is preferred when you're working with frequently changing technical content. For example, API reference docs, release notes, API-related tutorials, use cases, because it's catered to the needs of these content more. You can use Markdown source. If you prefer, you could use Common Mark. Of course, in the case of API reference doc, you might want to use OAS files, for example, but regarding the other stuffs, you can use Common Mark, GitHub flavor Markdown. You can also include images if you transform them into base 64 format at first. You can also add HTML and CSS classes to improve source content further. And it is also possible to use, to paste a HTML source or to push HTML source, but make sure that it doesn't contain any custom classes and other tags. If we switch to the manual editing mode, what just we saw, we have the WYSIWYG editor and the page builder functionality. WYSIWYG comes from what you see is what you get, but this is the most typical text editing tool. Almost everyone is familiar with it. And the page builder is just what we saw when Chris presented the homepage management. These are preferred when creating a frequently changing content for non-technical users, or not frequently changing content, but mostly for not technical users, like the API description page, which are landing pages, as we saw, blog posts, FAQ items, support page, home pages, onboarding pages, because the writers of these content might prefer to use these functionalities instead of the CI/CD pipeline. For example, of course, you can use the built-in text editor. You can also copy the content from the collaborative writing tools, for example, Google Docs. So the authoring tools of the CMS is always present. But if you paste the content from external source, you can even format it even further using the built-in tools. You can also paste a markdown source from to the portal, to the text editors, and it will be rendered properly. And this is also true that if you have the source in HTML, it can be also displayed as well. So, and let's conclude with a quote of Alvin Cho, that make a developer portal, which is like a luxury apartment complex. It provides governance and standardization for the product teams, who are the tenants, so to say. The portal provides the building structure. It's a consistent experience for developers. The product teams, the tenants, load and manage their own content, so they can decorate their apartments. Guidelines and validation provide consistency for loading and consuming documentation. And here are our dear content team who can use their own tools and environments, and they can also create content as they want, and the content of the dev portal will be consistent, visually appealing, and standardized. And thank you.